Thank you so much for that intro. I'm really excited. I'm excited that there's so many of you here. When we planned this, I was not anticipating. I'm from Canada, so I didn't know that it's American Thanksgiving. And so this morning I was like, oh, I'm sure so many people are going to be catching the replay. So I just want to say thank you to you guys for being here. Although I know I see some familiar faces here. So I know some of you are Canadian, just like me. Um, so my name is Gisele. I am an astrologer and human design guide. I have a background in therapy and social work. And social media, like content creation, being a creative being, like these are things that have always been a huge part of my life. And I actually think that one of the reasons that I started an online business is actually just because I love this part of business. And I know not everybody does. So today I wanted to share with you guys some of the things that I look for when I'm working with a client one-on-one, especially in my like mentorship programs, to kind of help find their path or their niche or a way to make content creation and social media marketing more enjoyable. Because I know some people love it and some people really don't love it. And so I think that we need to find a way to bridge that gap for those of you who maybe don't. And then maybe some of you really do love it, but you're having a hard time kind of finding your place in it. And so we're going to go into that today too. Um, if you're new to my work, if you've never been in a workshop with me before, I see everything I do as like a relationship. So I always show up with a framework, an idea of what I want to teach, but I also love questions. I love to go into what is most powerful and effective and useful for you. Um, and I can pivot pretty quickly. So just putting that out there, if you have specific questions, you can always pop those in the chat. Before we get started, I want to get a feel for where you guys are at with your business. Like, are you new to business? Are you, you know, a vet? Have you been doing this for a while? Put that in the chat, as well as what your relationship to social media marketing is. Do you enjoy it? Are you good at it? What are you hoping to learn today? And some of you might not even be business owners. You might be just here because you're creatives, and that's fine too. Or even influencers too. I'd imagine there might be a few influencers in the group. Oh, yeah, we have lots of Canadians in here, Australians. I love it. Okay, 20 years in business, but expanding into human design now. Okay, I love that. I love that so many more people are bringing human design into pre-existing businesses. That was actually my vision when I first started because my first iteration of my business was me blending astrology and human design in with my private practice therapy, my private therapy practice. And so I love when people are blending that as well. I've been using Bodygraph chart for a year, but not able to find clients. Okay. Um, yeah, hopefully this will help because a huge part of finding clients is like pouring yourself into your work and into especially your marketing, your content creation, so that your clients can find you. Not new to business, but new to HD in my business. Not super active on social media. Okay. Living in Canada too, just starting to show up on social media recently. I enjoy marketing and have done it for a long time, but I'm inconsistent and haven't had success with sales. I'm doing HD and feng shui. That's a very cool blend. That's very, very interesting. I love that. I'm restarting, about to relaunch. I love social media, human design, and wellness. I'm always on social media. I'm a feminine embodiment and leadership mentor and utilize HD and astrology. Been in business for a few years. I like social media. Sometimes I get overwhelmed. Okay, so it's looking like there's a mix, but it does seem like a lot of you guys are kind of new, kind of figuring this out. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. I want to start expressing my creative side on social media more. Stumbled into HD about a year ago. Okay, great. So, what I'm going to go into today, when I was thinking about like, okay, how do we teach something so specific in such a general way? Like, ideally, I'd be sitting down with each of you looking at your charts because something I want to just reiterate is even if you have, well, you will have some of the placements that we're talking about today, but even if you don't on paper have a good chart for astrology and human design content creation, or for social media, or for being seen, or for being magnetic, everybody is magnetic. And everybody has a creative potential or a creative seed within them. That is like that ability to create and to express is innately human, right? That is something that we all have access to, especially when we've been deconditioning. And so today I'm going to be going into some of the key things that I look for when I'm working with clients, and some of the key things that might be helpful for you to look at in your birth chart. However, there's a lot of moving pieces to this. And so I kept it pretty broad, right? I kept it like, okay, let's look at your Mercury, but we're not necessarily going to go through all 12 Mercury signs, right? Because that would get crazy and I would probably have to keep you here for like 48 hours. So there is a little bit of astrology and human design knowledge kind of needed in order to understand what we're talking about today, but I am hoping to leave time at the end to workshop. So if you're totally lost and you're like, I don't know what my Mercury placement is, I don't know what my Mars placement is, we can workshop that at the end, okay? So I know a lot of you guys mentioned human design. Is there anyone in here who has studied astrology? Is there anyone who's new to, like, where are you guys at with that? Put that in the chat as well. Because we're doing half astrology, half human design today. I like to use both. I really think of astrology being the roadmap, and it's where we do our meaning making. And human design is the GPS, right? It tells us how to get from point A to point B. It's confusing. Yeah, it is. It's a lot. A little bit, yes. Mercury 12 Leo, self-taught astrology for a long time. Okay, we've got quite a bit of basic astrology knowledge, and then a few people who are new, and that's totally fine. Okay. And then one last thing before we dive in. I promise I'm not going to be like making you guys do a call and response the whole time, but I do want to know what you most want to get out of today. Like if there's something specific that you want to learn about social media marketing and content creation. Where are the gaps? What do you feel like you need to learn? What would be the most helpful for you? Because that will help me help you. How to attract clients and get them to engage. Okay, I love this. How to magnetize dream clients. We're speaking my language. Okay. I feel like this is something that it's probably the Gemini energy in me that I picked up on and figured out very quickly in my business. There are obviously other aspects of business that have been very hard for me to learn. We all have our different skill sets we bring into this. But I love talking about magnetizing dream clients because I think we all have the ability to build like a cult-like following with our clients, with our customers, with our community. And I love to chat about that. So I love that that was a thing. Attracting clients, creating community. Things seem to change so quickly on social media in terms of what works, what's working now. Things that worked a year, 2 years ago seem obsolete. Yeah, it does shift and change. Anyone who has a third line, you're going to be uniquely equipped for dealing with that. And we'll talk about that in a bit. balance between personal self-expression and business branding, community, managing energy and cultivating discipline as a projector, Kate. How to show up on video with ease and how to show the value of my offers, authentic sharing. Okay. We have a 3-5. I'm a 3-5 too. Okay. So some of these questions will likely be answered throughout I have a PowerPoint I'm going to be sharing with you guys. And then some of them we might have to tackle at the end, okay? So I know I kind of scheduled in my head or slotted in my head that we'd be here for a little over an hour. If you have to leave at any time, that's totally fine. I don't take it personal. We all have super busy lives. Just zip out, that's no problem. But if you want to stay till the end, that's where I'll be answering, any questions that we kind of, aren't able to get into, okay? Okay, so let me share this PowerPoint. The Magnetic Creator, Social Media Marketing with Astrology and Human Design. So I kind of went into 3 mindset shifts because something that I've noticed with content creation, even outside of the astrology and human design piece, is that there's almost like an identity shift that needs to happen in order for us to make good content, like content that really aligns, content that hits, content that gets people messaging you and being like, I am obsessed with what you create and I am obsessed with everything that you produce. That comes down to 3 identity shifts that we're going to be talking about. And then I'm going to be going into the astrology and the human design that is related to those identities. Okay. And so feel free. I'm actually going to pull up the chat so I can see it. Feel free to pepper in the chat what you have and, what resonates for you, what your placements are, all of that. I would love for this to be like a collaboration, a community, little group chat. So the first identity shift that is really important in content creation is understanding that you are an artist, okay? In order for you to make good content, you have to make good art. And so I don't know if you guys have read The Creative Act. If you have, can you put up your hand or just give me a thumbs up so I can see? Because the Creative Act, in my opinion, is a Bible for content creators. And I know some of you are sitting there like, I'm not a content creator. If you have an online business and you are using social media as a marketing tool, yes, you are a content creator. That is just how this goes. It's how this industry works. Of course, you can do more old school methods, right? And then if that's the case, if you're like, I want to put my face on a bus and have that run around the city and do my marketing for me, that's totally fine. But when it comes to social media marketing, you are a content creator and content creators are artists, okay? So the ability to look deeply is the root of creativity, to see past the ordinary and mundane and get to what might otherwise be invisible. So this is a quote from Rick Rubin, and it's from his book, The Creative Act, which I recommend everybody read if they're wanting to make good art. Yes, and The Artist's Way is another incredible read. That one is also really good for if you have a creative block, because sometimes I find the challenge to making good social media content is having to work through those creative blocks, right? Like if you're feeling really emotionally, intuitively, artistically constipated, you're just not going to be able to create the kind of content that you need to create, right? So those are 2 books I would recommend. So the astrology of this, I called Unlocking the Muse, okay? So there's an element in our psyche that is found through our astrology that allows us to tap into and channel the divine. This is what artists are doing all the time, whether they're painting, they're writing, they're speaking, they're sculpting, it doesn't matter. They are deeply and intuitively connected to the divine. And in order to do that, you have to be sensitive. You have to, you know, resensitize yourself to the world. I actually think that this is why the deconditioning journey that we go through in human design makes us more creative. Something that I've noticed with all of my clients, trying to think, every single one that I've worked with in in an extensive period, so I know them very well, they all end up becoming very deeply creative as they decondition. And I think because we live in a very capitalistic world, a very productive, focused, masculine, linear world, we often value being productive over being creative. And this is a really key uh, thing that I notice with people who are trying to be productive when it comes to social media instead of being creative. And being productive will only get you so far because it will lead you into regurgitating the same shit that everybody else is making, right? I'm sure you guys have noticed that in like the pocket or the niche that you're in, there's like 90% of people are saying the same thing over and over and over again. They're just putting like a different background on it, different fonts. And then you'll have those 10% of creators that are saying something new. They're saying something different. They're tapping into a different stream, right? And that's literally what they are doing. They are so open and so sensitive and so attuned that they can see and speak to the nuances of what else is kind of happening in that community or in that bubble or in that industry, right? And this isn't just for spiritual communities. Like Simon Sinek is a really good example of this. He does this with all of his work about leadership. Like he is a true thought leader and he is a true muse, right? This is in every industry. And so the ways that I would start to work with resensitizing and unlocking the muse within myself, if I was at the beginning of my journey, would be through Neptune, Venus, and the moon. So, do you guys know your Neptune, Venus, and moon placements? If you do, can you put them in the chat? I'm going to go through all three of them and why they're important really quickly because we do have quite a bit to go through today. Scorpio, Aries, Capricorn. Oh, yes. And the houses are important too. Neptune 5, Venus 1, Moon 3. So I put Neptune first because Neptune is truly the subconscious. Neptune really ties us into, like, it's so ethereal and transcendent that putting it into practical words is sometimes hard. But our Neptune placement, especially the aspects between Neptune and inner planets. So say you have a Neptune Venus square. This might be Japanese to you or gibberish to you, or you just might not, know this language yet, and that's totally fine. But say you have like a Neptune Moon conjunction, a Neptune Mercury conjunction, that's going to tell you so much about how you access and tap into the consciousness that all exists. I know that sounds kind of esoteric, but it's how you create something that is different. It's how you tap into a different stream than the 90% of people are tapping into. And so our Neptune placement speaks to the areas of life and the ways in which we are deeply sensitive and deeply, deeply creative. So it is our inner muse, it's our inner artist. And it tells us a lot about how we can bring that energy into the world, right? For example, I have Neptune and Capricorn in the second house. Okay, that's a very practical Neptune placement to have. And I find that I am the most creative and the most tapped in when I'm actually solving problems for other people because of all of that earth energy there, right? So this work of working with people was a very clear fit for the muse in me. But you might have Neptune in the fifth, which is like a rock star creative placement, by the way. Or Neptune in the eighth, and your greatest gifts and potential when it comes to your intuition and your sensitivity and your creativity might actually come through love, falling in love, or opening your heart, or spending time alone, right? We all have our different access point to that Neptune energy. Venus is also really important. She is like, she's like the earthly embodiment of the muse. She is how we can access the muse on a day-to-day level without necessarily maybe having to go into this really esoteric place. And so your Venus placement, I love that you guys are putting these all in here. That's so helpful for me. Your Venus placement has a lot to do with the kind of tastemaker you are, the kind of art that you can create, and the way that you're able to make people feel, right? So if you have Venus and Gemini, it might be better for your content to be more communicative and witty and educational, right? Or if you have Venus and Cancer, it might be better for your content to be sentimental and deep and mysterious and connected, right? So Venus tells us a lot about how we build relationships with our potential clients and with our community, right? So some of you asked, like, how do I build community? Venus tells you a lot about the way that you relate to people and how you can connect to them and what makes you magnetic. And so I love to do this practice where I'll really, really lean into embodying my Venus. And working with her and presenting her and expressing her, because that is what is kind of like a super attractor for us. With potential clients, with our friends, you know, even in dating, in every area of life. So Venus is really important for how something might aesthetically look, and even aesthetically, like what is going to please you or turn you on. I'm a really big believer that you're, especially when it comes to like your brand and your social media and your content, like it should make you excited. It should turn you on, because if it's not turning you on, it's not turning anyone else on. And so the key to making content that you really deeply love is your Venus in a lot of ways, right? So then after Venus, we have the moon. And the moon is more about emotional safety. And I feel like people skip over this a lot in marketing, but people can only purchase from you or even like be influenced by you. So even if you're not selling anything, but you're just an influencer or a thought leader and you have something to say, they really cannot take on what you have to give them if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel like they can trust you, and if they don't feel like they can be held by you in a certain way. And so we all have a different way of nurturing people, and your moon, as well as your series placement, actually, I could have put that in, but your moon will tell you how you nurture people, how you can make them feel safe, what it is about you that is really not even just nourishing, but something about you that's foundational. It also tells you about the kind of clients and the kind of people that are going to be a good fit for you emotionally. That is a little bit more important if you're doing one-on-one work. Like if you're a coach, if you're a human design reader, if you're doing this kind of work, it's really, really important that your moon is present somewhere in your business or in your content so that the correct people can find you. How is it then if you have your moon in the 12th? Yeah, so I would start first with your moon sign and then go into the houses. But people with the moon in the 12th are really, really good at understanding the subconscious aspects of other people and helping them to see those parts of themselves. And so the moon in your birth chart is something that's really important for you to embody first. Specifically the sign. Okay. So if you have an Aquarius moon and you're afraid of being seen as weird or freaky or different or whatever, that's going to be felt in your content. Whatever you're creating is not going to be able to come through because you're not safe within yourself. If you have a Scorpio moon and you're afraid of your depth, You're afraid of how intense you feel. You're afraid of how passionate you are. That's going to be felt in your content because you're really going to hold back on that. The edge that you're scared to move into because this inner child within you is afraid of being seen as too much, too different, too whatever the thing is, that is often the edge that you need to move into in your social media and in your content creation so that the correct people can find you, right? So that you can really, really be seen and align with the people who want what you have to offer. This makes sense so far? I know there's a lot of pieces here in terms of the astrology foundations, which we can go back into at the end today when I'm taking questions. Which chart would you focus on in terms of business? Our natal chart, our progress chart. I'm drawn to sidereal as well. I would focus on your natal chart for business. And also, I would say your natal chart only if you are the face of your business, only if it's a personal brand. Otherwise, your business has its own chart. Okay. And so, how you find that is based on the you can choose. It can be like the date and time of your first sale. It can be when you launch your website. It can be when your doors open. But I would focus on your natal chart. And then if you are like the face of your business and maybe you're a service provider, for example, I would focus on your progress chart for knowing what cycles are going to be important for you, right? Like if you're going through a progressed moon in Scorpio, that 2.5 year period might not be the time to launch a whole bunch of new stuff because you're going to be in a death and a rebirth phase, right? So the progress chart is important to know how and what you can contribute to your business at that time. But in terms of really looking at how to show up in your business, I would go with the natal. Yes, thank you. The link there where you can get your astro chart is in the chat now. Okay, so let's move on to the human design piece. A second piece of being an artist is being yourself. Oh yeah, it'll give you the astro and the HD. This is a new thing that they just added in, by the way, which is very, very exciting. I don't think there's any other online chart generators that do both. You guys can maybe correct me, but I haven't been able to find one. So I think it's incredible that you guys are offering that. That's like so necessary and so needed. So when it comes to the human design aspect of becoming an artist, I really think of an artist as someone who is sharing themselves with the world, someone who is expressing themselves, right? And so in human design, we have 3 different types of energies. We have individual, we have tribal, and collective. Okay. Are you guys familiar with this part of human design? Or is this kind of more, yeah, okay. Do you guys know whether you have more individual, more tribal, or more collective energy? If you do know, put it in the chat. If you don't know, that's fine. But I would love to know, and I'm sure some of you guys will have a really good mix. More collective. I have mostly individual, and then I have collective as well. I have all 3, like a really good balance. Yeah, and we'll all have all 3, but you will maybe have more of your gates centered in one of these 3 energies. Something that I find with people who have a lot of individual gates is that content creation is a little bit easier for them because the individual energy in human design is all about expression. People who have individual circuitry are here to change the world through being themselves. And so they very naturally see the world differently than others do. And so something that you can do that's like a little hack if you're having a hard time finding like what is different about me? Like I want to create content that's unique and interesting, or I want to show up in my social media marketing in a way that is different from how everyone else is doing things. you can look to what individual gates you carry, regardless of whether you're primarily individual or not. And you can work on leaning into and deconditioning these energies, because these are the energies through which that natural expression is going to come through. And these are also the energies through which you are meant to be different. Like you're really not meant to fit in. Okay. With these energies, being yourself and being authentic and being an individual is going to be more important than fitting in. So Gabor Mate talks about this a lot, about how we have two opposing needs. We have the need for attachment and the need for authenticity. I would say we also have a third need that is probably more connected to the collective energy. I don't know what we would call that. Maybe a need for order or a need for meaning making, but the need for authenticity is an individual gates need. Okay. So this is a theory, but I think that people who have mostly individual energy are going to have a higher need for authenticity. Those of you that are more tribal, you have more tribal gates, you might have a higher need for attachment. And that's perfectly fine and beautiful. And so then the way for you to create your community and to become yourself is to also keep in mind what people want from you and what people need, and to constantly be kind of bringing your community into the fold with you and asking them, what are you struggling with right now? How can I help you? How can I fix these problems for you? While also figuring out the ways to do it as an individual, as an original being, right? How do you know what energy you are? So, the book that I would recommend for this is Karen Curry Parker's Understanding Human Design. Yeah, I have it in front of me. In the back, she breaks down individual, tribal, and collective energies. And she also breaks down what gates belong to what. I would write down all of the gates that you carry in your design and then put next to it, okay, I have gate 1, that's individual, right? And then total them all up and see which one you have more of. And some of you, like I said, will have a really seamless blend of all 3, which is always really beautiful when that happens. But this requires a bit of mental math. Maybe someday we'll have like charts that calculate that for us too. That would be very helpful. Oh no, my mouse just died, you guys. Okay, I gotta charge this for a second before I can move on. Okay, let's take a minute, because I think some of you look a little confused. How are we doing here? Is there anything that I can do to support you in understanding this? When we first start learning these things, like, it does feel a little bit crazy making, and I always joke that I wish I could find like a pill or something that would help to make it easier, so that when we're at the beginning of learning these things, it metabolizes faster. So I want you to know, if you're feeling a little bit in over your head, that's okay. We all feel that way when we start learning this. It is a whole new language. I created a human design card deck a while ago. We also show circuitry in channel cards. Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. I love that. Thank you for sharing. So things like that are obviously so helpful. Okay. So the second identity shift when it comes to marketing specifically, but also content creation, is that you are a storyteller. So have you guys read the book All Marketers Tell Stories by Seth Godin? I think it's like a Bible for entrepreneurs or anyone who's doing marketing work. He says in that book, he says, marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but about the stories that you tell, right? We all want to be moved by the businesses that we're purchasing from, by the people that we're connecting with on social media. We want a story to attach ourselves to. We love a good story. And so what good content creators do is they're very, very good at bringing us into their world and telling stories. So even if you're not doing like influencing, content creation, say if you're selling a product, you're selling a service, it's really important that you know, like, what is the story that I'm telling? And who am I talking to and who needs this story, right? And this will come from, especially if it's a personal brand. And I would imagine, since you guys are here, that the work that you guys do is like a passion project, right? Um, that it's something that lights you up. There's going to naturally be a story within you that you have to tell about what what your service is or what you're providing. There's going to be a story that just pours through you when you start to trust yourself and when you start to trust what you have to say. So there's a piece here of learning how to be a really good communicator, really learning how to get people on board. Like, you want to involve people intellectually and emotionally as well as spiritually, right? And you want to give them, like, maybe it's like an underdog to champion, or you want to bring them on this like hero's journey with you. That's why we love, when you see those influencers that start from nothing and then all of a sudden they're just doing incredible, and we just love to follow them and we love to follow that journey. It's because they're telling a story. And so one of the biggest blocks that I see with people who are marketing online is they're not telling stories. There's a really big difference between saying, this is my product, this is how much it is, this is what I think you might benefit from, versus bringing people into your world that you have built and allowing them to see and understand and imagine what the thing that you're selling is going to do for them. Does that make sense? Yeah. So a lot of these skills that are required for good marketing and good content are seemingly not related. But if you can, read books about storytelling, take stories on story, or take courses on storytelling, really learn how to be an effective communicator, that's going to have a huge impact. And then obviously now we're going to go into, the places where you can look, where you might have some natural abilities for storytelling. So when it comes to astrology, we're really working with the psyche, right? We're really working with the intuitive, subconscious aspects of self. And this is where we can really get into the art of enchantment. And this is where we can begin to enchant our audience. I'm sure some of you guys, I always try to, like, during Black Friday, put on my little blinders and pretend that the world doesn't exist, because otherwise I always spend way too much money. But I'm sure you guys in the past week have had ads or things come up where you're like, oh my God, I need to buy this thing and I need to buy it right now. Like, you feel kind of spellbound by it, right? That's often the sign of a business or a brand that's really, really good at telling stories, because they're working on your subconscious mind. It's not even a question of, do I need this thing? It's a question of, I am so spellbound by this thing that I need it right now. Right? I'm going to buy it right now, right? And I'm a really big believer in, like, enchantment is magical. Bringing people into your world and telling stories and enchanting them and giving them hope and inspiring them, as long as you have a good product and you can back up everything that you're selling and all of those things, that is good for you and for them. It's a much more fun, sexy, playful, exciting, inspiring way to be sold to. And I think that it brings a bit of a sense of wonder back into this work, right? So if you want to look for the ways that you are naturally enchanting and the ways that you communicate that land for people, you can look at your Mercury, your third house, and your ninth house. There's other placements, but I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. These are what I would start with. So what you would do, say if you're like, okay, I have Mercury in Sagittarius and I do not know what that looks like, you can Google it. You can purchase, any basic intro to astrology book to get a little bit of info. My personal favorite way to learn about these aspects is to find other like celebrities or influencers or people that have that same placement and watch them in interviews because you can start to see, oh, this is part of me that I maybe have pushed down. And look at them. They're really communicating in this authentic, natural way to them that is so attractive, right? And it allows us to start to see our natural communication style a little bit differently. Um, Gordon Ramsay's actually really good at I love that I used Mercury in Sagittarius. He has that placement and he's so funny. He's so blunt. He says the things that no one else wants to say. Um he is not afraid to really put himself out there. He's not afraid of not being liked, and he's also not afraid of saying something funny that no one else gets. And that is like very much aligned with his Mercury in Sagittarius. Whereas, say, if you had a Mercury in Libra or a Mercury in Taurus, that might not land for you. That style wouldn't land. So, your Mercury really has to do with the tone of voice, or if you've been doing a lot of work on your brand, that is your brand voice. Okay. That is the way that you can speak to people that really is authentic, that is magnetic, and that really lands for them. It's also how you'll find clients and customers and community that really align with the way that you see the world. Because Mercury isn't just how we speak, but it's also how we filter information and what is going on for us mentally, right? Um, I'm curious what your guys' Mercury placements are. Can you put that in the chat just so I can see? Adding on to that, we have the third house. Okay, lots of Leos. I love that. Mercury in Leo is a really, really good placement for content creation, right? Because the more you speak, the more we want to see you, right? We really, really, really want to know what you have to say. Yeah, I love this. Okay, so then your third house also has to do with how you communicate. Specifically with third house, I'm mostly interested in what planets are there. But if you don't have any planets there, then you would look at the sign. That also has to do with the quality of communication, as well as the ways that your mind works. So, for example, you might take the energy that's in your third house and then express that through your Mercury. But the third house has to do with the foundations of the mind and the way that you see the world. And so, if you're going to tell a story that is different from how everyone else in your industry is telling a story, that might come through the lived experiences that you have that are tied to our third house. Because our third house rules communication, it also rules sales. So, for business owners, it's really, really important. And then it rules our mind, our neighborhood, our childhood neighborhood, our peers, and our day-to-day experiences. And so there's so much juice and nuance in the third house surrounding what we're experiencing and the stories that we can tell from what we're experiencing, right? And then the ninth house, if we want to get a little esoteric, if you feel like you're a teacher, if you feel like you're here to inspire, if you feel like you want to tell stories that are not just about like the day-to-day minute, but that are zoomed out, bigger picture, think like Paulo Coelho. He would be like a ninth house storyteller for sure. If you want to tell stories that bring people on a journey, like the hero's journey would be ninth house, then you want to look at what you have there and what sign is ruling your ninth house, as well as what planets are there. Leo ninth house, no planets. My ninth house is empty. Yeah, and this is also just an add-on too. So if that doesn't feel comfortable for you, you can really just lean into Mercury and the third house. And if this is totally new to you, I would just start with your Mercury. Okay. Okay. So then when we're looking at expression and storytelling from a human design lens, we look at expression. When I think about the businesses and the brands and the content creators that I love to watch online, They are all businesses that are expressing something. Like, even if I don't resonate necessarily or don't fully understand it or don't even agree, there's something really magnetic about just expressing, just saying the thing, just like putting yourself out there, just being, right? And so there's obviously so many different aspects of human design that we can look to for expression. I know some of you who know human design really well are probably like, okay, but what about these other parts that we can work with? There's a lot, but I would say I would start with the throat center and what gates you have there. Let me know in the chat, do you have a defined throat, an undefined throat, an open throat? And if you know your gates, what are those? If you have a defined throat, depending on what other center is connected to it, you have something to say. And your message is going to be consistent. It's going to be something that you can rely on. And there's going to be probably a very clear message that wants to come through you, right? I have the 1020 channel. And so, a really key part of my art, whether it's this or art that I used to create before I was a business owner, has always been about empowerment. I just love to make people feel empowered. I love to make people, feel as though it's okay for them to love themselves. That comes through that channel. And so, whatever channels you have, whatever gates you have, that all could potentially point you towards the kinds of stories and the kind of expression you want to bring into your business. If you have an undefined throat, you have this really beautiful gift where you're able to tell stories that are going to resonate with different people differently depending on the day. So, what I love about undefined throat people is they tend to be prophets and they tend to be channels. Like, these are the people that like things just flow through them and they're like, I have no clue where that came from. And it's because they're tapping into someone else's energy or they're tapping into collective energy. So there's a bit more of a mystical quality with the undefined throat. And sometimes I see people with the undefined throat who really worry that because they don't have a defined throat, that means they can't be consistent in their expression. And I think it's really important to understand that the mystical quality of the undefined throat and the ability to say what needs to be said and to pick up on what is the unsaid is your gift in your content creation. That is, the area that you tell stories from, right? There's a lot of magnetism in the undefined throat and a lot of wisdom, right? So I would look at your throat center and I would look at your gates. I would also look at your profile because profile has so much to do with the role that we're playing, right? It has so much to do with who we are and how we're perceived. Okay, yeah, you guys are getting the drift. Thank you for starting to put your profiles in there. It's the role. And so something that I have loved playing with, and this might just be because I'm a 3/5. I have this thing where I'm like, "Oh, you want me to be the villain? I'll be the villain. You want me to be this? I'll be this. You want me to be whatever you want me to be, and I will be that." And there's something really liberating about knowing the profile that you have and the specific combo of lines that you have, right? Whether you're a 5/2 or a 2/4 or a 2/5, because it allows you to understand that that role that you're often placed into is not personal. And if we're all telling stories and we're all living stories and we're all coexisting, right? You playing your role, even if you're just like really playing it up for your art, for your expression, for your business, that is you. How would I say it? Like almost like doing a kindness or doing a service to everybody else. Think about if we were all in a play and we all had these different roles, but everybody wanted to play the like 2/4 role. So all the 3/5s were pretending to be 2/4s. All the 6/2s were pretending to be 2/4s. Things would get really one-dimensional very quickly and the whole play would fall apart. So there's something really magical about knowing your profile and really leaning into that. I will say that fifth lines are natural storytellers. So if you have a fifth line, that's something I would really work on deconditioning and and working with the fear of being projected upon and the fear of being misunderstood and the fear of even like the fear of abandonment that I find fifth lines often have, because when you're not understood by most of the population, it can be really hard to feel rooted and secure in yourself. But when you can understand that the other side of that fifth line is attraction and magnetism and influence, leaning into that can be a really big superpower. I would say that fourth lines, any of you that have fourth lines, you're very natural influencers. Like people want to know what you're buying, what you're eating, what you're doing, all of those things. So sharing more of your like minute day-to-day experiences in your story is really important, right? And then six lines, as we know, are the wise teachers. And so they often tell stories from the end, right? That's something I would say too. Like fifth lines and sixth lines do much better when you tell a story after it's been wrapped up, right? Because if you tell a story while you're in the middle of it as a fifth line, you'll receive a lot of projection around it and it might cause you to doubt yourself and your own path in that story. Sixth lines just love to wrap up everything they've experienced and alchemize it and turn it into wisdom and share it with the world. Fourth lines, though, we really, really love being let in on the day-to-day details of your life and what you're navigating. And we love being part of the story as you're going through it because that allows us to feel connected to you. That allows us to feel like, wow, she's so relatable. She's such a friend, right? So even the point at which you share your story can be different depending on your profile, right? Okay. Okay. So then the third shift, and this is maybe the hardest one that I see, especially with spiritual entrepreneurs. So before we even get into this, I want to check in and see where you guys are at with this mindset of being a CEO, being someone who is in authority, right? Being someone who like when you decide to take the jump to being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, everything is now, I don't want to say like on you because ideally, hopefully you have support and you're good at asking for help when you need it, but you do have to step into a mode of self-trust. I saved this one for last because it's actually the most important. Um, if you don't trust yourself and you don't see yourself as an authority, if you cannot embody the archetype, the energy of the CEO, business is going to be very hard. It'll be very hard. And you'll feel like a victim to your business often. You'll feel like nothing is going right, nothing is working, and you won't know how to take responsibility for the pieces that you have to take responsibility for. So I'm curious when I say the word like CEO, and when you start thinking about pulling this and taking this on, does this feel icky for you? Do you have any conditioning around this? What are your thoughts around being someone who is powerful and in charge and making, money? Fuck you money. Like what are your projections or ideas or what's your comfort level with this identity? Oddly, I find calling myself a CEO is fine, but less so calling myself an authority. Yeah, that's because there's a lot of CEOs that are not authorities. You can like wear the CEO hat and do all of the things, but someone who has authority, and I don't necessarily even mean authority over others, but authority over self is someone who trusts themselves. And those are rare beings in this world. So that makes sense that CEO feels fine. Especially, I mean, different cultures really glorify the CEO role too. Used to be afraid of it, but now being a CEO turns me on. Okay, I love that. I love that so much. My heart beats faster, exciting, but also eek. Okay, I love that too. Um, I'm not sure. I can't remember if you I'm sorry if your name's is it Leia or Lee? I can't remember if you were the feminine embodiment coach, but if you are, it makes sense to me because you speak like so somatically. And there's such like a felt sense in the way you speak. Um, I have had many mediocre bosses, so that tracks. Yep. The money stuff is a block for me. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a really big block for a lot of entrepreneurs. Totally fine with it, ready to make fuck you money. Okay, I love this. Love it. I love making money. Um, and being in charge. I love the idea of being a CEO. I'm focused on coaching women. Okay. Yes. Okay, so we have like a mixed bag. Yeah. Okay, so this shift is really important. This was the most important shift I made in my business and the most impactful and the hardest one to make, especially for those of you that are Canadian. I think we have a very different culture here. Something I've noticed, even like people here can be so successful, making crazy money. They can have like a global company and they'll still like call themselves small business owners. And I'm like, babe, you are not a small business owner. Like your product is in shelves across the world. There's really this like humbleness that comes into like the Canadian culture. And so I think this is especially hard here. But I think it's also just hard for women too, and it's hard for anyone that has experienced any conditioning around um hierarchical power, right? Because the old paradigm, it has been this paradigm of I have power and therefore you don't. I'm an authority and therefore you listen to me, right? Like that's been what we've been prescribed. And so now, as we're moving into 2027 and the new paradigm and the cross of the sleeping phoenix, it's not power over. It's like I have authority and you have authority. I am the authority of my own life. I am making decisions based on what is best for me. I am the CEO. I am the creator. I am taking full responsibility for my ride and my life here. And so there's a lot of deconditioning and like mindset shifts often that need to happen for someone to embody the energetics of the CEO. And so just give yourself a lot of grace and patience if this is really, really hard for you, because it's a collective shift that we're going through. Okay. So the first step in embodying this like CEO frequency, this CEO mindset, is taking initiative and being responsible. So I can't remember where this comes from, but I remember one of my teachers talking about responsibility not being this like stick in the mud, you never have fun. I just like, always taking on so much. I'm overburdened. They talked about responsibility being about our literal ability to respond. So if you are crumbling, if you are collapsing, if you are, getting freaked out and restless anytime something challenging happens in your business, or you don't make as many sales as you were anticipating, or you launch something and it's Mercury retrograde and the tech doesn't work, right? If you don't have the ability to take initiative, to solve problems, and to respond to that, it's going to be very hard to be making the kind of content that you need to make that is going to position you as an authority that will allow people to want to hire you, right? And so the areas of astrology that speak to our ability to take initiative and also our path, our unique frequency that we take when we're taking initiative, is Mars, whatever house that rules Aries, and the midheaven. And so we're going to break these down. Let me know what these are for you. So fifth house Mars and Gemini. I love it. That's so playful. That's a playful Mars. Libra Mars, ninth house, Taurus MC. Mars sixth house, Mars fourth house Virgo. Okay, I love all of this. So the sign that your Mars is in will tell you how you take action. Something I have noticed, maybe you guys, those of you who follow my content, you've probably noticed I have a Aries Mars. And so when I get an idea for a post, or I'm going to launch something and then I have to create really quick content for it, I'm the Cosmic Laundry on socials. I'll type that in at the end. Um, I have an Aries Mars and it's in the fifth house. So I do it like right now today and I just like jump and it's just done and I never think about it again. And so that does mean like there are spelling mistakes in my content. There is, grammar mistakes in my content. There are things that I have to go in and fact check in my content. And I have embraced that because I'm an Aries Mars. So when I want to take initiative, I want to do it right now. And if I were to try to do this the way that everybody else tells us to do it, which is like to put a lot of stop checks in place to make sure it's perfect, that by the time it comes out, it's da 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 da, I would never create content. It would never, never, never get done. Whereas if you have Mars and Virgo, right, you are not probably going to be motivated to produce or to put anything out or to take initiative on something until you know everything you need to know and until you have crossed the T's and dotted the I's and made it look exactly how you want it, right? Or made the experience exactly how you want it. And so knowing your Mars placement can help to let go of a lot of shame around the way that you act in your business, the way that you act in sales, the way that you act in content creation. And it can allow you to really lean into your strengths and just do that very well instead of trying to be somebody else or do it somebody else's way. Right? Um, the house that rules Aries, this one is important in the sense that this is where you're naturally going to be. This and Leo, actually. I probably could have put both in, but this is where you're naturally going to be an authority. Okay? This is where you're naturally going to take leadership. And this is where you're naturally going to want to like run headfirst into things. And so if you're really struggling with action, which I think a lot of people, when they haven't embodied that CEO energy, they struggle with action. Really leaning into, okay, what house do I have Aries in? What does that mean about me? How is this showing up in my life? How can I lean into this so that I can build my tolerance for taking action? I can build my tolerance for being a leader. I can build my tolerance for leadership, right? And starting in the area of life where you're already comfortable and then starting to kind of branch that out and bring it into other areas is something that I would recommend. Okay. You can also look at your Aries placements too, right? Venus in Aries, Saturn in Aries, whatever you have there. And then your midheaven. So I saw some Virgo midheavens. I think there was a Libra midheaven. I want to know how much you guys resonate with your midheaven because a lot of people don't like their midheaven and they have to do a lot of work around accepting it and embracing it. So I do like my MC in Taurus. Okay, I love that. Pisces midheaven, Cap MC, love it. This is great. So learning to love your midheaven is like a huge shortcut in business because your midheaven is your reputation. It's your legacy. When you're looking at your astro chart, your birth chart, at the very top of the chart, there will be something called MC. There'll be a line. And whatever sign that line is at, that is your midheaven. And so the midheaven is directly opposite the IC. The IC are like the roots of our birth chart. This is our family tree. This is our lineage. This is our ancestry. These are our emotions. This is our subconscious. This is our body. It's essentially the foundations of who we are. That root system allows us to really grow into who we're becoming, right? Most people do not end up living the exact same lives that their parents lived, right? That's just not how most of us, especially if you're on a self-development journey, operate. It's because our MC, our legacy, our reputation, our path is always directly opposite our childhood upbringing. And so because of that, the MC is really hard to lean into because it requires you kind of like leaving the family behind in a way, right? Saying you are you and I am me and I'm on my own journey and I'm going to do this life differently and I'm going to be known for different things. And so our midheaven is something that we grow into. We tend to naturally start to lean into it after age 30, a little bit more. And then the older we get, the more we feel like our midheaven. But something that I've noticed is that people who use their midheaven in their branding, in their brand voice, in their content creation, in the way that they show up in their business, they just tend to be rewarded by the universe. And I think it's because it shows that you're doing a lot of your deconditioning work early. It also aligns with how people perceive you. And so when there's that congruence between how people perceive you and how you perceive yourself and how you show up, that also builds trust. And like I said before, we need trust in order to buy, right? So when you lean into and trust your midheaven and you embody it and you work with it and you work through any blocks that stop you from leaning into it, that is a huge superpower in your business. Okay. I do a lot of work on the midheaven. So if you guys have been following me for a while, you've probably seen me talk about it a lot. Okay. So then the human design piece of the CEO energy is obviously your strategy and authority, right? If you could just follow that, if you could just learn what your strategy is, learn what your authority is, follow that, you will be fine. Like you wouldn't even need any of this other stuff. You wouldn't need to intellectually understand any of this because that is how we learn how to listen to ourselves, right? A good CEO is someone who listens to themselves. Ideally, like, yes, they're able to listen to other people and they take feedback and they're community minded, but they also have a maybe not a gut instinct unless they're a sacral, generator, but they have this ability to listen to their body, to their authority, to the part of them that speaks and tells them this is what we should do. This is where we should go. This is where we should take the business. So much of business success is intuitive, right? Or it's often labeled as intuitive, but it's authority. So much of business success comes down to your ability to listen to your authority. So I'm curious if you guys could put your strategy and authority in the chat and then let me know, are you good at listening to it? Is this something that you're working on? Where are you at on that journey? Because I would say like that is the foundations. That is so important. And I would start there for everyone, learning how to listen to that. It also just allows you to build trust with yourself because when you aren't listening to your strategy and authority, you're going to go to your mind to make decisions. You're going to go to the business coach that you've been following on on Instagram for a million years. You're going to go to other people to tell you what decisions to make, who you are, all of these things. And your soul aligned business is never going to come through that. It's only going to come through you building self-trust and really trusting who you are. Okay. Yeah, I follow mine regularly. We have a lot of like emotional authorities. Yeah, sacral, all about embodiment. Yeah, so these are your keys. That's your key to seeing yourself as the authority. And how you'll know that you're really leaning into this is that anytime you're confronted with information, you will fact check it through that authority and go, is this true for me? And if it's not true for you, you'll be able to let it go. Like it won't have to sink into your psyche. You won't have to grapple with, should I do this or should I do this, right? Because everyone online is telling us, everyone in the world is telling us so many different things. How to eat, how to dress, how to do business, how to market, how to whatever. And so the way to get over that like mental noise is to listen to your authority. So I love that you guys all seem to know it. The next piece is understanding your energy type, because you need to set up your business in alignment with your energy, right? If you're a projector and you are trying to create content and do social media in the way that I do as a manifesting generator, that is not going to work. You're going to burn yourself out. Right? Whereas me as a manifesting generator, if I tried to do content like a projector does, I would get so bored. I would need 4 different social media accounts to run, right? Like we all have our own path to building a business and creating content that aligns with that business, marketing in a way that aligns with that business. And so knowing your energy type is really important. If you guys want to put that in the chat, that would be helpful too. Trying to think. I guess I would say like sacral beings versus non-sacral. So sacral are generators and manifesting generators. It's really, really, really important that you like your content and that it's fun for you to make, right? So if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't want to show my face at all, and that's not a fear or a vulnerability that comes from conditioning, but it's just a like that deeply, deeply bores me, then you need to trust that and you need to create content that is exciting to you, right? That's really, really important if you have a defined sacral. If you don't have a defined sacral, it's important for you to look to other aspects of the chart and also to look for like what an end goal is in terms of the kind of content you want to produce and create. Like I love for non-sacral beings, so reflectors, manifestors, and projectors. I love series for you guys, like a signature series, because then you become known for that thing and you can put in a lot less work, right? You get more bang for your buck. You can plan it out. You can do it in the way that aligns with whatever your energy type is. But it allows you to gain that momentum faster. Whereas for generators and manifesting generators, I find that series don't really work like a signature series because it'll work for as long as you're excited about it. And then you're bored with it and you don't want to finish the series, right? So it's really, really important to just understand your energy type and to work with that. Yeah. I've tried to do so many series and then I'll quit halfway through and then I get angry DMs. So I don't do them anymore because I'm like, I cannot promise you that I will follow through on doing all 12 signs or all energy types or whatever. So knowing yourself is a superpower for sure. Yeah, I start them and then get bored. Exactly. Exactly. Where I find that especially projectors, they can pick something super niche and talk about it over and over and over and go really deep and nuanced and like it just really works. Obviously not for all, but generally. Yeah. Okay, so then the next thing is your ego center and your gates. So let me know in the chat, do you have a defined ego, an undefined ego, and what gates do you have to find? Undefined gate 51. I love gate 51. Such a shit disturber gate. Undefined ego, gate 26. We have lots of 26s in here. Defined 26, defined 26 and 40. Undefined ego with gate 21, undefined with no gates. Okay, so open, Alyssa. I think I knew that actually. So your ego center has a lot to do with how you're motivated and what you're motivated by. If you have a defined ego, I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but you are designed to climb certain mountains. If there's something that you want to do, you will do it. You will get it done. It will happen. It's just going to happen in its own time. So sometimes I find people with a defined ego can get a little impatient because it's like I want it right now kind of energy. People with an undefined ego are often always trying to prove themselves, right? And so that can really sneakily show up in your marketing and your content. We can feel it if you're trying to get our approval when you're creating content. We can feel it when you're launching a new product and you're not really sure about it, but you want us, your customers, clients, to tell you that it's amazing, right? We can feel it. So a really, really important part of clear, concise storytelling and communication and being an authority is deconditioning your ego center, right? Yeah, I heard that I sounded desperate. Yeah, I'm so sorry that someone said that to you. That's kind of unkind, but there is a bit of that with sometimes the defined ego, or sometimes there's other aspects of the chart where it is this like void that feels like it needs to be filled, right? And when you're at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, it can kind of feel this like, oh my God, I need someone to buy this course. I need to make a certain amount of money. I need to, I need someone or something outside of me to validate that this is a valid path for me, right? I need someone to tell me that it's okay that I'm doing this. And that really sneakily shows up in your marketing. And it shows up in the way you talk about your product. It shows up in the way that you even just present yourself. And so that journey is a journey. I think we all have that at the beginning of business, even if we have a defined ego. But yeah, how do you get around that? So there's a few things that you can do. One, I would say there's a part of it, which you guys are maybe not going to like this, but there's a part that's about acceptance, about accepting that you're starting something new and that feels scary. And there's a bit of an imposter syndrome, and there's kind of an unknown and an uncertainty, and a will this work or will this not work, that kind of energy. But I think a really key way to work with the ego center is to decondition from all of these ideas that we have been taught about what makes us valuable as human beings. I really recognized that my business took off when I no longer attached my sense of worth to how successful I was doing in my business. When I started to see my life as so much bigger than how many sales I had that month, or how many clients I had, or how many followers I had, right? I had to do a lot of work to decondition from these external things that were validating my path. And when I started to turn inward and go, okay, what is the like actual real reason for why I'm doing this work? And when it started to come from I guess it was always there from the beginning, but we get these stories, right? About if you're not a 7-figure entrepreneur, what are you doing, right? If you're not like working 2 hours a day and making millions of dollars, all of these different things, when you can decondition from that external idea of what it means to have a successful business, and you can figure out what feels successful and valuable to you, and when you start to build your business around that, that is when this starts to heal, right? And that is when we start to feel that you're more rooted in your path. So there's a lot of work with the ego center. There's also a piece of working with your ego gate. So the 4 ego gates speak to different things that motivate us. And when you know what motivates you, it allows you to lean into opportunities that align with that without feeling guilty about saying no to other opportunities that don't align, right? So gate 21 is money, okay? If you have gate 21 and you feel shameful about making money or wanting money, or you feel vain or whatever the things that you've been told that you are because you have gate 21, you really need to work through that. People with gate 21 are here to make money. They're here to be independent. They're here to be self-assured. They're here to be in control. It really is a CEO energy. So you need to learn to just accept, I like money. I am motivated by money, and that's okay. And the reason for that is that people with gate 21 are usually very good at knowing where to put their money, and to building, very good at building resources in the community, right? If you have gate 51, you likely want to have impact, right? You want to feel as though you're making a difference. You have like big dreams. And there's a part of you that is, this is like, to me, gate 51 feels very, like, if we're getting esoteric, feels very high priestessy to me. People with gate 51 really initiate people. They initiate them into their path. They initiate them into their purpose, right? And so gate 51 is big and it's impactful and it has a large energy vortex, you know, or it just feels like it does. You can feel someone with gate 51 a mile away. And so you have to not be afraid of how powerful you are if you have gate 51. If you have gate 26, you're a natural influencer. People want to know what you're doing. They want to know where you where you've been. There's an energy with gate 26 that is really about sales. And so it's ironic because I see a lot of people who have gate 26 who really struggle with sales. And it's because they have to decondition with this energy. There's a bit of a fear with gate 26 of being too charming, of being too snake oil salesman-y. People with gate 26, when they have to decondition, they often are afraid of sales. They're afraid of influencing people. They're afraid of that power that they have because it's strong. When someone is really in their worth, right? And that's how you know too that you've done your ego-centered deconditioning. You'll be in your worth. And so these gifts will really turn on. Someone who is really in their worth with gate 26 is going to be able to sell with such a high level of integrity. Like, you will trust anything they're selling to you because you trust them, because you trust that they have a good heart, because you trust that they believe in what they're selling. But it's also really crucial for people with gate 26 to believe in what they're selling. If you don't believe in the product that you're selling, or if you don't believe in yourself, it's going to be almost impossible to sell it, right? So with gate 26, there's a lot of belief work that has to be done. How do I fix this and do deconditioning? So gate 26, you mean specifically? Yeah. This one is like self-worth work, like going really, really, really deep into whatever is blocking you from feeling worthy, right? And I think that's true, honestly, for all four of them. But I really noticed that with my gate 26 clients. Yeah, a life of trauma. As yeah, as a lot of these things really bring up. I think that's the thing about business. I've always said, like, there's 3 paths to healing for your childhood trauma and all of these other aspects. You can do therapy, you can get married. Actually, there's 4: therapy, marriage, kids, or business. Any of those 4 things are going to require you to confront all of that trauma that is lingering. I would recommend, this is kind of like I'm putting my therapist hat on for a second. I would recommend somatic work. It's the quickest deconditioning tool. Because it works with the subconscious, it works with the body, and it helps us to move through it without having to make stories. Okay, and then lastly, we have gate 40. Gate 40 is the gate of the giver. People with gate 40. Yeah, somatic yoga, as long as they're like actually trained in somatics, because sometimes people label something as somatic yoga and it's not really. But gate 40 is the gate of the giver. It's a very generous energy. It's community oriented, and people with gate 40 are motivated by their people. So the moment you feel that you are responsible for someone, you now feel motivated by them, right? Or to give to them. People with gate 40 are naturally generous, and they often build communities. They build businesses that are built on community, or they build businesses that are built to support their families or their friends. So I have gate 40 and I also have gate 21. And I always say, like, I will only either do something if I'm getting paid for it or if there's a community aspect to it. If it's going to allow me to help a lot of people, right? If it's going to allow me to be of service. But my business didn't really truly, like, I didn't really put a lot of energy into my business until I brought my sister in. Because the moment I felt like, oh, I'm responsible for my sister's retirement, like, my business has to be successful, right? That was when Gate 40 really kicked on for me, and that desire to provide. Like Gate 40 is the provider in a lot of ways. And so people with Gate 40 are really motivated when they feel that they have something to deliver, whether that's to clients or to um, themselves, but more so other people. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to get into questions. I know we've been here for probably a lot longer than you guys were anticipating, so I'll try to keep these really brief. If you need to go, that's totally fine. I really appreciate you guys being here for this whole time, and I'll stick around to answer any questions that you guys have. You can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, whatever feels best. Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm really glad you guys liked it. I love talking about this stuff, like the intersection of astrology and human design and business is like so fun for me. So I always love an opportunity to chat. Okay, you know what's funny? You have my sister's name. So I have your mom's name and you have my sister's name. I'm assuming that your family's probably French. Yeah. Yes. That's so funny. Small world.
Where are you
I'm
in
in
Canada?
Saskatchewan.
Oh, you're in Saskatchewan. I'm in
Yeah.
Ontario. Yeah, I'm in
Okay.
Niagara.
Oh, yes. Cool. Yeah, my dad's family is from Quebec, obviously.
Yeah, me
So,
too.
yeah, we're probably related, honestly. I love that. Yeah, I actually wondered when I saw your name if you were French because no one spells Chantal that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Okay, you guys can catch the replay on YouTube. Can you talk about managing energy, cultivating discipline as a projector? Thanks so much for doing this. I love your content. Thank you. I love creating content, so I love that you guys love it. Okay, managing energy, cultivating discipline. So I find it tough because I think that a lot of projectors, when they ask that question, and let me know, I could be totally off base, but Um, I find a lot of projectors are trying to operate like generators still, even if they think that they're not. There's like nothing really wrong with your energy, and there's nothing wrong with your amount of discipline. It's just the strategies likely that you have in your business and what you're putting on your plate and what you're trying to do. I think when it comes to managing energy and cultivating discipline, it's really important for you to take a less is more approach and to take as much as you possibly can off your plate and to do as little as possible so that you can focus on doing what you do like really, really, really well. So my sister, who is the second half of the Cosmic Laundry, she's a projector. Um, and she works like 2 hours a day, right? Like she'll sometimes call me and she'll be like, I can't work today. It is not a working day. And I'm like, that is fine because when she does sit down to work and when she does sit down to do things, her ability to create structure, to create containers, to organize things, to make things really efficient for us helps me so much and allows me to run other parts of the business in a really big way. I also think this is why I'm a huge fan of projector manifesting generator businesses like collaborations because we have such opposite strengths and we work so beautifully together. But I think it's really important for projectors to um find a way to do things like less is more, like the lazy girl method. Like whatever you can do, pare it down and make it as bite-sized as you can, instead of trying to have more energy, just working with what you've got. I also do find though that sometimes you can access or free up a little bit more energy as a projector if you are spending enough time in nature, if you're like emptying out, if you're taking care of yourself. Sometimes projectors, because you have so little energy, you're spending so much energy on your business at the beginning, and then there's none left for your self-care, and then that actually creates a downward spiral. So if you can only do 2 things today, I would always take care of you first. I think that's an important lesson for everyone, but I've tried implementing more consistent deep work sessions and have had trouble following through with them because of my energy levels and health. Yeah, so I think finding what does work for you. So if you tried that and it didn't work, I guess it depends on your profile too. Because there might even be other aspects too that are really like, yeah, 4, 6. Are you before your Saturn return or after? Yeah, okay. So you're experimenting. You're in the experimentation phase. You've got to like fuck around and find out until you can find the thing that works for you. Um, so I think patience is really needed for everybody in business. Um, not just for projectors. Oh, my link is broken. My projector didn't do her job. I'm gonna have to yell at her. That's her job. Just kidding. I won't yell at her. I'll go fix that though. Can you go over Neptune and Venus again quickly? Yeah, so these are my 2 favorite planets in astrology. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I basically don't shut up about them. But Venus is like the earthly relationship to love and sensuality and beauty. It's the way that we access the divine through the body, you know? Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, and it speaks to a more divine, intuitive, sensitive, spiritual kind of love and kind of energy and kind of creativity. And so when you're creating content from Venus, it's about connection with others. Okay. When you're creating content from Neptune, it's about connecting others to the divine. Does that make sense? You're like a conduit for the divine, for something bigger. It doesn't always have to be spiritual. Apple, for example, does a very good job of working with Neptune. Like it's bigger picture, like mystical. Sometimes the ads they put out, you're like, what are you even trying to say? Like it's not quite so pinned down and practical. And I personally love when content creators are able to find a blend of both, of tapping people into archetypes and these subconscious things and the greater picture of life, and then also being very connective and collaborative and all of those pieces. Okay. Is there an easy way to learn astrology? No, there's not. I'm sorry. It's just learn. It's like learning a language. So it's like you just got to pick up a book. Yeah. Or you just hire someone else to interpret that for you, right? Like that's what my job is. I always say I'm like more an interpreter than anything. You don't have to learn it. And it's not 100% important for you to learn it in order to be successful in your business. Just if you want to implement it, hire someone who does understand it, you know? Um yeah, really trying to follow the combo, but I have a lot to understand about my chart. Yeah, this is how we all feel at the beginning. So if anyone's feeling discouraged, like just know it's how I felt that way too when I started learning. Oh, love you too. Okay.